What is it?
Please don't.
Video games aren't always given their due credit, but the fact of the matter is the medium is a mature art form that has the capability to deeply move a person. Now, I'm not saying every single game is going to bring you to tears, but it certainly happened in your lifetime, and in some cases, video games are what made it okay to cry. But it's not just tears of sadness, in fact, it's not just tears at all. Games can make you feel a very wide range of emotions. But how? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today Gameranx wants to ask the question, how do video games have an emotional impact on us? Really quick, I want to tell you there are some spoilers in this video. It's not spoiler heavy or anything, but just a warning. The very first thing that we need to address is the idea that all art emotionally affects us. To sit here and talk about how video games can have an emotional impact on us is an indicator of just how difficult it's been to get people to recognize video games as an art form. But it's not 1996, it's 2016. Things have changed, the medium and the artists within it have matured, and people want to say more about the human condition and everything we see in this crazy universe. Understanding how emotion affects people through video games requires that we understand exactly what connection we have to video games. And I'm not going to talk to you about serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. We're trying to get to the bottom of feelings.
Elizabeth.
Promise me.
I will stop him.
No. That is an oath you cannot keep. But promise me that if it comes to it, you will not let him take me back.
Not chemicals. This isn't a biology lesson, and while understanding the chemical science behind it is important, it's not the topic at hand. In many games, we're shown a fictional world through the perspective of a specific character. This character has to be designed in a way that on some level we relate to them. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're like us. That means there's something about them that we get. Some decision they've made, some event that's taken place in their life, something they say, some mannerism. It could be any number of things. And it may not immediately be noticeable. You may not relate to a character immediately. It may be something much later in the game that exposes them for someone that you understand. To bring up Final Fantasy VII, one of my favorite games of all time, when you first meet Cloud Strife, he's kind of a douche. In fact, he manages to be a douche for a while. But as you uncover more about him, you find out that he's complex, and there are things in his life that have happened that you would maybe react similarly to. And all of those things have led to his weird image of himself that he projects. Or maybe the character doesn't have a personality at all. Maybe we're talking a Bethesda game. Maybe the character is simply an avatar for yourself, that you're intended to make look as closely to you as possible and make choices that you would make. How you interact with the game world is imperative that it has some sort of emotional connection with you. You have to be there emotionally in some way. That's the foundation. That's where everything else comes from. That you are immersed in your character, whether they're clearly defined or something that you create yourself. If a game developer wants to emotionally affect a gamer, and they don't know the first thing about relatability, or giving you the means to create a character that accurately reflects how you feel in that world, then we might as well just stop here. Bear in mind, that doesn't mean like puzzle games or sports games or something like that, because those basically make you feel celebratory because you win. That's pretty easy to explain. Yes, this was hard. I'm happy that I was able to overcome this. Yay me! It's not really that hard to get. Not that what happens when you beat a puzzle game or win at a sports game isn't great. Not to say that the win in the multiplayer match shouldn't be celebrated. Oh, it should, but it's pretty obvious why you get emotional over that. Now that isn't to say that there's no complex emotions that go on in these games. For instance, when you play a sports game and you play as your favorite athlete, it's different than just meeting the win condition for the game. The same as winning with your favorite Overwatch character or whatever hero-based shooter you play. That's attachment and familiarity. But these are things that happen very naturally, whether they are or aren't part of the game design. Much more complex emotions that happen during narrative games can spur development within yourself. Having that relatable character, having that avatar that is the embodiment of you, is the perfect conduit to talk to you about the human condition. But that doesn't mean they can just start throwing tragedy in your face and expect you to be like, oh, this is deep. Games have to establish an environment that speaks to you in the same way the character does. Yes, it is possible to hit you in the gut right away. For instance, Firewatch does this exact thing, but there's a good reason why it matters enough to make you emotional. Firewatch asks you a series of questions that makes you assume the role of the main character. You immediately start to relate, because you've had some element of choice in the series of events that goes on. It reflects you in some way, so there's a connection. And then when it almost immediately gets tragic, they've laid groundwork that causes it to actually matter to you. But to go all the way back to the end of Conker's Bad Fur Day, which is a raunchy game and not really one that you would immediately consider emotional, what they did do is plant a lot of seeds. In many ways, you did relate to Conker. He was kind of a crass person, and he didn't really always fit in. And the game chronicles his rise in many ways, and he ends the game as king. And it's ridiculous, but it's also accompanied with a monologue that reminds you the grass is always greener. It's a bittersweet ending that leans more towards the bitter than the sweet. It took loss to get where he was, and this reminds you that often real life is the same. Certainly you've experienced loss, and that's relatable, but the real magic of Conker is that he got you to let your guard down. You thought you were safe from emotion. You thought this was an edgy game with a foul-mouthed talking squirrel. Well, it ain't just that. In a lot of ways, you were meant to feel a kinship with Conker. You are meant to kind of look at him as one of us. Rare saw an opportunity. They understood that by the end of the game, you saw some element of yourself in this talking squirrel. And that's how a game makes you emotional. That's how any art makes you emotional. It reminds you that you're part of something, and that there's stuff that we all have to deal with. Whether it's dealing with aspects of yourself like when you found out you're Darth Revan in Knights of the Old Republic, or in real life when you realized maybe it was you that was holding you back in some situation, or when a game forces you to deal with loss like Metal Gear Solid or Heavy Rain, or again, Final Fantasy VII. If a game's doing its job right, it's getting you to confront mortality, both in yourself and in your loved ones. It makes you think about the fact that life doesn't go on forever. In order for it to properly matter to you, it has to make a connection with you. And a game may take a very long time to do that, and it may do that through having clever gameplay, while in the meantime very slowly incorporating elements of the human condition, like that guy on the squad of Space Marines that talks about what he's gonna do when it's all over, or that character who gets angry at you when you say you don't care. We all deal with stuff like that in real life. Maybe not to the extremes that we see in video games, but that's the point. Video games have a limited amount of time in order to form an emotional connection with you that all of these other things in life have had, well, your whole life to. And we could talk the science of why Lee's death mattered to you in The Walking Dead, but if we went into that, that would pretty much be ignoring the point. Emotion isn't science. And yes, you can explain it with chemicals and equations and theories and all of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's good. We desperately need a better understanding of all that. For how technologically advanced we are, we don't really understand the human brain very much, at least in a manner that could be a lot more helpful than where we are now. But why do games make us emotional? That's not a science question. It's a question of the human condition. It's a question of what art is. It's a question of how much empathy you have. It's a question of how virtual environments and characters are built. And the answer to this question is, in essence, why gaming is such a unique form of art. Games make us emotional because we're asked to be part of them. And the games that do make us emotional, the games that do tell us about ourselves and the world, do a good job facilitating that. How do games have an emotional impact on us? Because we're people. And game developers are people. And we're having a discussion. It's a very indirect discussion, but it's a discussion. It's about us, who we are, what we want from life, what we hope to achieve, our own limitations, and how we'll overcome them. And we've only scratched the surface. The most exciting part about this for me is that people look at games as art now. Not everyone, but the people who matter do. And knowing that people take it seriously is usually something that encourages people to get better at it. How do games make you emotional? Let's meet in the comments and have a discussion about that. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button. And if you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every single day of the week, and the best way to see them first is a subscription. As always, we thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on Gameranx.